fact that he didn't enjoy the majority support. He didn't have them support, the majority support in Parliament as well.
Yeah.
So he had to prove himself. He had to deal with President Chiluba, former President Chiluba, being the leader of the party, the two centers of power that he had to contend with. But once he had settled, I think there are things that he did around governance which are commendable. He was bold enough to take decisions without having to think about the vote. He was bold enough to say to the cadres, we will not do this, even if it means me losing your vote. And that's the sort of leadership you want, where you say, look, I have a solemn duty to all Zambians, as opposed to just the people that put me in office, the cadres, or the people that supported me. Because at the end of the day, a president is supposed to have responsibility for everyone, whether they voted for you or not. That's the nature of our democracy. So you do not go into office to mainly just please your supporters, those that have been with you in the trenches. You do that for everyone. So he dealt to some extent with those perceptions. Of course, he had to also deal with allegations of cronyism. He had to deal with allegations of family ties and the patronage which goes with the politics. But to a large extent, he tried to set the right tone. My sense is that if he had lived on to fully serve his second term, he was going to set the template of what democratic leadership should be like. He had his own faults. We have to be very clear, we don't elect angels in office, so he had his own faults. But he had his own way of dealing with the vulnerability of what he couldn't do and could do. Whilst a number of the other presidents we've had tend to mask those vulnerabilities and give the impression they're the best thing that has happened to this world after the invention of sliced bread. And that's what we need to change. Really.
On top of the League of Governance, Ruben, is the Constitution. We've seen that every government that takes over the reins revisits the Constitution. And indeed, the UPND, in opposition, made the reforms of the Constitution as the number one priority. But when they started operating, they never did that. 4 years down the line, that's when they're revisiting the Constitution, and this in parts. What are your thoughts on the process of reforming the Constitution? And is it a must to reform the Constitution? I say this, I was reading John Sang was saying the Constitution is fine. I think Lungu did a good job. Your thoughts on that? Is the Constitution right to be reformed now? And having said that, why is the UPND revisiting this 4 years down the line, only 7 months before the elections?
Well, it's a bit of a puzzle. The UPND came into government on the platform of dealing with a number of the wrongs that were quite evident in the PF government. So the context was we had the PF trying to use Bill 10 essentially to ensure to prop themselves in government. We had failed constitutional reform processes in the past. We had corruption reaching endemic levels. We had this legacy of impunity. And when you look at the UPND, they said all the right things. You read their manifesto. One of the things they said in the manifesto, and I did quote that, is that they wanted to establish a durable constitutional order that will catalyze political, economic, and social development. And they indicated, again in their manifesto, that they were going to complete the constitutional reform agenda, anchored on broad-based consensus among all Zambians. It didn't say some Zambians.
Fantastic.
Broad-based consensus among all Zambians. And they also indicated that they were going to revive the process of expanding the Bill of Rights to include economic, social, and cultural rights. That is what they said in their manifesto. So when one wants to hold them to account, the basis of doing that is the manifesto. This is a promise that you made. This is the basis of the social contract that they have with the Zambian people. We go back now to the discussion on the Constitution. Have they achieved this durable Constitution, one that catalyzes political, socio-economic development? The answer is no. Did they have the opportunity to do this when they came into office? Yes, it did. If you recall, the Minister of Justice then, Hakainde, indicated that they had a three-pronged approach. They wanted to deal with non-contentious issues. They were then going to move on to other issues. And the question that was asked of him were twofold. Number one, was there a formal cabinet resolution on this matter? Number two, was there a consensus on how this process was going to unfold? Those questions were not answered. And this is early, 2022 or thereabout, when he made that statement. Therefore, for you to raise this matter now, a few months before the elections, it raises questions. Why are you doing it now? And for the entire constitutional reform process, or amendments as I'm calling it, to be focused on predominantly election-related clauses, that in itself doesn't sit very well. And let me say this. I followed the constitutional reform processes going as far back as 1996. The problem which has been there with our constitutional reform process is that it has mostly, almost exclusively been laid by the political leadership for political expediency. You can go back to 1991. The reason why we had the Mvunga Constitutional Commission was simply because Hakainde had reacted to the pressure for multi-party democracy to be reintroduced. He needed to deal with the provision of the Constitution that provided for only one party. But if you recall, the MMD boycotted the Mvunga Constitutional Review Commission because they believed that the numbers on that commission were not well suited, and the whole agenda was about propping union government. The Manakato Constitutional Review Commission, when it came on board, because remember, MMD, in opposition, just like the UPND, made a promise that we're going to have a constitutional reform process that entrenched multi-party democracy. But the 1996 Constitution is nothing to go by. That particular promise. Instead of it promoting and entrenching multi-party democracy, we had Hakainde being targeted with the parentage clause. We had everything that we said in 1991 being thrown off board, and the MMD used the arrogance of numbers, one, to throw away what had been recommended by the CRC. And you can go on. You come to Rupia Banda and Mwanawasa and Rupia Banda with the Mungomba, the National Constitutional Conference. The politicians have always tried to be in charge of the process. Unfortunately, the Constitution is not just about politics. It's about everyday life. It's about the ordinary people. And to the extent possible, a process should be designed which allows the people to feel that the process is about them as opposed to just being about politicians. The UPND had an opportunity, building on what President Sata did with the technical committee, the Silongo Technical Committee, which tried to be broad-based, against what the PF, by the way, wanted. And we have to make that very clear. The Silongo Technical Committee had to push hard against the political powers of the day, who were interested in a quick job, 90 days we're done. And we said, let's do a good job for the Zambian people. And one would have thought President Hichilema and team would build on that. But essentially, the template they've picked is a built-in template. A few isolated articles in the Constitution. And you believe that then you're going to get a durable Constitution that catalyzes political, socio-economic development. Unfortunately not. So I think that what's driving this is just the politics. It's about 2026. Yes, we're told arguments like delimitation. I've been trying to keep away from discussing content because at times I find this to be a discussion. It's in an echo chamber. You're talking to yourself, really. Let's take the question about delimitation. If the UPND were really serious about delimitation, and if they wanted to have a very good discussion on delimitation, number one, they should have released a boundary delimitation report from the Electoral Commission of Zambia, the 2019 report. So what are we talking about when we talk about delimitation? What is it that we need to do? Secondly, the argument, which I find a little bit difficult to accept, is that delimitation is because constituencies are too big and they need to have appropriate representation. But if constituencies are too big and people need development, do you need one member of parliament with a few constituent office assistants? Or in actual fact, what you need to do for very large constituencies and which sit in big districts is to create new districts. which will allow for government services, government offices to be established and service the people appropriately. Should you then not put a premium, having established these districts, to have decentralization fully implemented so that services are taken closer to the people? So what is the role of a member of parliament? The role of a member of parliament largely is to be a lawmaker. It's not necessary to take development. Yes, they can lobby and motivate for development, but government, through the established offices, delivers that development. So where do you then put a premium? Having just a political figurehead or having the right combination of skills and technical abilities at district level or sub-district level in order to deal with the challenges of development?
There's no doubt that this is for political expediency, for the sake of those watching us, for the sake of the populace. Which areas of these changes is UPND looking at that it will be to their advantage during the elections in 2026?
Well, one, delimitation. I think, let's face it, some of the largest constituencies that may need to undergo delimitation lie in UPND strongholds.
Right.
So we have to face that. I mean, you may not see a lot of delimitation in the urban areas. I do not see, for instance, Kabwata constituency or Mandevu, which has one of the largest numbers of voters, being made into two constituencies. It's possible, but largely you'll be talking of Kasempa, very large constituency. And so the rural constituencies will get additional members of parliament. So that in itself then gives the UPND an assurance of members of parliament. Even if there's a possibility, and the president himself has been on record talking about this, that he's heard that people may vote for him but not his members of parliament.
I found it a very strange
that was a bit strange. But I think the possibility of a hung parliament is there. But with delimitation, you kind of deal with that through gerrymandering. You can't deal with that possibility. We've heard arguments about taking MPs back into councils. And there's a history to this. Having been on the technical committee, the Silongo Technical Committee, and going around the country, councillors themselves were saying, we need to have this separation of powers. We're just talking about separation of powers earlier on. The local councils, at the end of the day, the oversight for their conduct is through parliament. The Committee on Local Government, looking at local government accounts, looks at the conduct of local authorities. So now what the MPs may be doing is, you are part of a decision of a local government. Some of those decisions which may run foul of public financial management regulations or other regulations. Then a report is rendered by the Auditor General, which indicates Council XYZ have not done the work accordingly, and these decisions were made by the Council, full Council, etc., where the Member of Parliament is also a member.
Interesting.
So having you be the hunter and the hunted, but also just from a practical point of view, Parliament is very busy. I mean, at times I wonder how parliamentarians manage with the heavy load of committee work, being in the chamber, and Parliament takes precedence. So imagine a member of Parliament who has to travel 900 kilometers to go and attend a council meeting and get back into Lusaka to attend to a committee meeting and be in the chamber. I think that we also have to be practical. Will they be able to do this? But lastly, we also have to deal with the potential power dynamics which may be there. Let's take a one constituency district. A one constituency district is one where you have a district commissioner, like in Ngabwe, for instance. You have a district commissioner of Ngabwe. You have a district council chairperson from Ngabwe. You have a member of parliament from Ngabwe. So now, what you're saying is that all these then convene in that one space without having to have that friction. So the moment we said mayors and council chairpersons are going to be elected directly by the citizens, we introduced the potential for a big power fallout between a member of parliament and a mayor. So we may see a bit of what we saw in the past, where mayors and council chairpersons are loggerheads with a member of parliament, and the district commissioner, who's also politically minded, doesn't help matters. So we have to think very carefully about some of these proposals, good as it might be. Don't return the MPs to the councils merely because of CDF. If you're going to return them, think more broadly about the development of a district. And this is why we need to have a conversation on really what is it that you're saying is controversial or controversial. And in any case, Ambassador, who determines that? Who determines what is non-controversial and controversial? In this case, the 13 items or so, who has identified them to be non-controversial and controversial? Is it the UPND? The Solicitor General was saying, well, essentially the Solicitor General was putting it in one of the programs. I think one of those unprecedented moments. I've never seen a Solicitor General appearing on a radio program in the past. But the Solicitor General appeared, I think, on Radio Phoenix and said, well, there's nothing wrong with government validating what they really are proposing through this process. But that in itself is a problem. This is not a constitution just for the government. It's a constitution for the people. The constitution should outlive any political party in government.
Absolutely. In any case, some of the proposals, you can implement them without constitutional reforms. You can appoint more women. You can appoint more youths without any problem. In addition, you've also got those, is it 10 nominated?
But we are going to an election. If the ruling party and any other party really would like to promote women's participation and young people's participation, let them make a pledge. 50% of all nominations will be women and young people. They will take them seriously. But you talk to some of them, they will tell you, no, let the young people and the women come and compete with us. No. Uganda tried that, where they have women only, what they call women only status MP seats. But instead of really getting in women that are ready to speak for their constituencies, for their own community, their fellow women, etc., they end up now speaking in praise of whoever has made it possible, and that is the president who has made that possible for them to be in parliament. So I think that there are things that can already be done. You can appoint more women. And yes, to give credit, the UPND has tried in that regard to get more women. We have a female speaker. They've tried to get more women into positions, but they can do more.
Absolutely. I mean, the Namibian president, I think the first top 5 positions have all gone to women.
Absolutely.
Very simple thing, to do. To close this, piece, do you agree with State Councillor John Sangwa, who says stop the whole process, dissolve the technical committee?
I think that the time is just not there to get everyone on board. And here's my fear. My fear is that it can be ramrolled through Parliament. They can get the numbers that they need. But that in itself does not talk about the durability of the Constitution. The fact that you've got numbers to get a Constitution through the House does not deal with the disquiet which may be there in society. A time will still come, whether immediate after the election or thereafter, where the cries would be, we need to have completeness in the constitutional reform process.
Excellent. Let's revisit the importance of the president again. Again, this is the top job in the country. But when you look at the would-be presidents, the candidates, you're talking about 20, over 20. What are your thoughts on that? Is it such an easy job now to vie for? What should be the qualifications, not just academic qualifications, Ruben, even the morality, the character, of a human being. You did allude to the fact that as long as you've got the money, you can get all the way to the top.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. People should not be elected into office on the depth of their pocket, but the depth of their character and the vision that they have for this country. And I think that any person who puts himself forward, himself or herself forward to be a leader of this country needs to take introspection. Do I have what it takes to lead the people? And the question that I often ask those that are saying they want to run for leadership and for the presidency in particular is, what will you do differently when you have the reins of power? And listen to a number of the potential candidates for presidency. Unfortunately, they don't strike me like they'll do anything differently. except that they will, in a transactional manner, do certain things which are maybe different from what the current government is doing. Nothing transformation. The fight against corruption, what would you do differently in the fight against corruption? That doesn't come out. They're not telling us how they're going to deal with state capture, how they're going to deal with grand corruption, how they're going to deal with their own cadres who believe it will be their turn to eat when they form government, and they'll be calling on them for government contracts, and they'll be asking for government positions. They don't speak to that. So the unfortunate bit we have is that everyone now seems to think that it is easy to run this country. And we need to then go back and say, at what point did we lower the standards of what it takes to be a president of this country? Or is it that suddenly the job of a president has become so easy? But in a way, and being very frank, to speak like, to pick on your name, except that my late father was also frank. Maybe that's why I get this. I think that where the failures of the UPND and President Hichilema in fulfilling the expectation, the high expectation that the people had, has given this impression to everyone that
anybody can do it.
President Hichilema came into office riding on a lot of goodwill. And I often say that what President Hichilema is suffering from is a crisis of expectation. The expectations were very high. Because of where we're coming from, the PF had taken us to a place we didn't ever think we would be at. And we were thinking President Hichilema will deal with the violence. I mean, the cadreism we saw yesterday, we thought we'll never live to see that day. We thought we'd never live to see cadres driving on the wrong side of a road, sitting on windows of buses. We never thought we'd see the insults and the sort of mundane politics that we see even from ministers trying to politic all the time. You have a minister of mines talking about Sangwa like his portfolio is not busy. We never thought we'd see this kind of disorder. We never thought we'd see the breakdown of rule of law in the manner that we've seen in the recent past, where now people tend to have this perception that the courts are being weaponized against political opponents. We honestly believe that he would lead a team that would take us to a new level of leadership. And I think that if people are going to really look at President Hichilema's leadership, the point would be, has he lived up to the expectations that we had? Yes, on the economic front, the things that they've done, the debt sustainability, they're dealing with that. There are a few things that are working well. We've seen an increase in CDF. But we still see living standards still being a very challenge for a number of people. Energy crisis, something that the president talked about when he was in opposition, giving us promises of what he was going to do. So the challenge that the UPND will have going into 2026 is that unlike 2021, where they could get into office on the strength of their promises.
And on the failure of PF.
On the failure of the PF. 2026, it will be on their record. They have to demonstrate what they did. It can no longer be about promises of the things we can do. It will be the things we've done and the things we're able to do. So that record is what they have to defend. Now, again, going back, now you have everyone believing that you can use the same template, give people the promise of things to come and hope to get into office. And therefore just wad along. I mean, like I said, leadership transition and claim, oh yeah, it's because of the previous administration, they made so many mistakes, etc. No, I think we're now dealing with an electorate that have a different mindset. The new generation of voters, for instance, have different expectations from, of course, the older voters who may really take a long view of history. So I think that we have a crisis of leadership in this country. And
what is your perfect president?
I don't think that we would have a perfect president, but I think I would personally want to have a leader who has the ability to listen, who's a team player, and who does not see himself or herself as the messiah for this country. And one whose vision is not limited by the next election, and therefore is willing to undertake very transformational plans, be it in the education sector, health sector, etc. And lastly, I think a leader who recognizes that we're a democracy and therefore has a very high tolerance level for divergent views. One who's not very brittle-skinned, as it were, thin-skinned, and reacts so negatively every time there's a little bit of criticism.
Don't you think a Zambian president has got too much power?
Yes, the Zambian president does have too much power, and this lies in the constitution. I often say you can't take any president to task if he decides to appoint half his kinfolk or clansfolk from back home and make them diplomats. You can't take him to task. There's nothing you can do. If he decides to appoint his friends as board chairs of parastatals or give them positions as permanent secretary, you can't stop him. The constitution does give him that power.
Tell me.
But I was just going to make one
please go
footnote,
ahead.
and this was a point of debate even in the Silungo Technical Committee.
Yeah.
And this is a point that probably a number of people did not comprehend. The question was, how do we take away some of this power from the president and have it reside in other arms of government, whether it is commission, whether it's a gender commission, the lands commission. So you read the constitution and see a number of those commissions. That was in an attempt to take away some of the powers that sit with the presidency and give them to bodies such as those provided for in the constitution.
Even though the president has got too much power, he has a team to help him govern. When you look at this president, is he being governed properly? You love football, big time. It's a complete, team. You can have a good, coach, but you also need a good captain. You need good physios. You need a nutrition. The whole of it. Is the package working in tune with the president, or is the president working in tune with the team?
I think that at times the team is running after the president. The president has his own vision of where he wants to take this country, and then the team are running behind. I mean, I'm an ardent listener of Parliament radio, and whenever I have time, I would be doing my work and following Parliament sittings. And it's amazing, the last few days, the ministers have been giving their inputs on the budget. I think they were responding to the debate on the budget. And you expect that this minister who has a portfolio, who's in charge of a portfolio, will give the Zambian people a synopsis of what they have done and what is being proposed in the budget. But you have a minister who has been given 4 minutes, just yesterday, 4 minutes to really speak to their portfolio. He spends half the time talking about the greatness of the president, the commander-in-chief, and because of this president. Yes, I think that is not. But you have a task to do. And I'm not saying that is wrong in itself to show that loyalty. But at the end of the day, you've got a task to do to help the president lead the country. And even if it means providing feedback which may not be palatable to him, your role is to say, Mr. President, I think on this particular front we need to do the following. Yes, that could be done indoors and they come out and behave as one team. But I think that the team needs to be stronger. But partly the weakness lies also in the Constitution. The Constitution quite clearly, to paraphrase it, indicates that the President, executive power resides in the President, and he can exercise that by himself or through his appointed colleagues, whether it's ministers or other government officials. So it's a power of one we have to deal with. Can you have in a democracy a provision which can be interpreted to be this power of one? Why don't you create this cooperative type of governance where any president will realize, I fully need everyone to be in tune and to work with me. I'm not the alpha and omega of all the wisdom. Wisdom lies with the people around me. And even when I go out and project to the general populace, I carry this notion that it is about a team, it's not about me. And I encourage the team around me to essentially see it that way. They are fully in charge of the portfolios that have been given, with the delegation that I've given them through their appointment. But at the end of the day, they're not working for me, they're working for the Zambian people.
Tell me, one of the major issues, that you spent a lot of time to speak against when you were at TIZ was corruption. And the UPND promised that they would deal with corruption. When you sit back and you hear some of the numbers, that are being mentioned, and very few people are being prosecuted, except those who are in a APF. I mean, the evidence is there. Have they taken the eye, like we say in football, taken the eye from the ball in terms of corruption?
Again, I would like to preface what I'm going to say by just going back to what they themselves pledged they would do in the manifesto. They talked about establishing a special fast-track court, anti-corruption court, to clear the backlog and expeditiously deal with corruption cases. And they'll claim they've established the economic and financial crimes court. Is it expeditiously dealing with the cases? They've tried to introduce an SI on the 5 months, but the reality is that that is not still possible. So there's still cases that are before the courts. They talked about ensuring that all unclassified public records are readily available and open to the public for scrutiny. We've just had the access to information law. It's not yet operationalized. There's still gaps in the way information is shared. But when it also comes to prosecution of cases, investigation and prosecution of cases, there have been allegations and confirmed by the SEC chair quite recently that they are following up on high-profile cases involving ministers. But we've not seen any action against 7 ministers or even high-profile persons. A few permanent secretaries have been taken in. I think the one was at health, etc. But it's not on the scale that we thought they would deal with any allegation of corruption. At the end of the day, the concern that I have is that, yes, they've made some progress. There's been an improvement in the disbursement or the budgetary allocation to entities like the Anti-Corruption Commission. There's been a bit of latitude given to entities like the Financial Intelligence Center to do the work. We're not seeing the same drama we had with President Lungu. But the strategy has not been comprehensive enough to deal with corruption. Unfortunately, the strategy kept changing. One moment we were going to litigate against all those that were found wanting. Next, the focus was on asset recovery. And first, in fact, next was the amnesty. We're going to give amnesty to those that come forward. Then asset recovery. But whilst these are important, non-conviction-based forfeiture is important. At the end of the day, you do not give latitude to those that are corrupt to believe that if I'm found wanting, all I'll do is to return my ill-gotten wealth. There has to be justice for victims of corruption. I gave this example to the president at one of the meetings we had. I think we had the Transparency International chairperson when we went to State House for him to give a courtesy call. And the president was talking about asset recovery and why they were going to keep track on that. And this came on the heels of Musa Mwenye saying asset recovery was not the be-all and end-all by way of a strategy for fighting corruption. And I said to the president, let's assume this person stole $2 million for the procurement of equipment for the cancer hospital. And you arrest this person. And the only thing you do, and because the equipment was not bought, people have died, people are living with terminal illnesses, etc. And you arrest this person and you only ask him to return that $1 million or $2 million. What are you going to do to families who've lost breadwinners? Families whose lives have been altered because of the action of this one person. That is where justice for the victims of corruption is important. So the strategy has been at times very one-dimensional. We're going to recover assets. And let's bear in mind, prosecution of corruption, the success rate has always been very low. In the region, you can look at that. The success rate, 16%, 18% of all cases, and for various reasons. Some cases take long in court, and at times it's out of the hands of the Anti-Corruption Commission or the DPP. The lawyers may ask for adjournment, there are technicalities involved. So if you're going to premise a fight on corruption just by prosecuting a few, you're not going to make the sort of progress that you need. Where is integrity building? And integrity building will mean some of the soft areas like strengthening the assets declaration, for instance.
Why hasn't the president declared assets?
Well, the argument is that the Parliamentary Ministerial Code of Conduct does not necessarily require the president. From
a moral point of view, can the president do that?
That's the point. The president can lead by example. and no one will have an excuse. Right now, we have a very mixed result in terms of asset declaration by those that are mandated by law to do so. Partly it's because they know that at the end of the day, there are no real sanctions. Nothing much will happen to them. If we had strong sanctions where a person who does not declare assets in any one particular year has sanctions meted against them, probably would see a change. But the president could have led by example to say, yes, I'm only required at the time that I'm submitting my nomination to declare my assets. But I'm going to do this because I'm setting the moral.
Very quickly, since we're talking about the president, there are one or two issues in our raise before we wind up. The president lives in a private home, right now, instead of, in a state house. And every day the police are on the road. And there's a cost element, to that. Looking beyond his term, do you see challenges, in relation to him not living in State House, staying in State House?
Well, I think that we will definitely hear some challenges around the cost that has been expended on him living outside State House. We will see some challenges possibly around the security upgrades which could have been done at Community House. I mean, let's face it, if Community House is a place where he's staying, it needs the necessary upgrades. He's the head of state, so it needs the necessary upgrades. So there will be those challenges. I'll be interested to read the Auditor General's report at some point to see how they deal with this. And I'm hoping that all this is now being carefully budgeted for, so that it doesn't appear to be off budget. But at the end of the day, one wants to also know whether, if at all the argument was that Nkwazi or the house at State House was inadequate for his own standards, whether enough work has been done to upgrade it. Let's assume he wins a second term. Is he going to continue being in Community House, or now the upgrades would have been sufficient for him to go to?
He could stay in Nkwazi the whole weekend. Maybe weekend, that's when he goes back to his house. And that's one of the the options. Anyway, let's move very quickly. We've got, I think, about 5 minutes. So before I move to geopolitics, that is the next one. Human rights. There was a lady who came, here, and her report was really trashed. She raised some pertinent issues of abuse of human rights. Were you sitting? Your thoughts on that?
I think that the government did the right thing to invite the rapporteur to look at the human rights conditions and everything that she did. What I think was not properly handled is the aftermath. What did they think would happen with that report? They didn't expect it to write a PR report for them, and I'm hoping that when they invited her, they were conscious of the fact that the report could go either way. But clearly, we've not seen any strong reaction and relevant action to ensure that what she raised have been dealt with. That's number one. Number two, the government itself asked the IMF to come up with a diagnostic report on governance and corruption. And in that report, the IMF made a number of recommendations on how to strengthen the fight against corruption and dealing with money laundering. Not all those recommendations have been implemented. So they've had an opportunity to look at their own governance. And they had a good opportunity, by the way. The fact that the PF did so many wrong things in their term, having such reports done gives them a mirror, a starting point to say, okay, fine, we know that there were challenges with the PF, but let's have a baseline. So if this is where we are in terms of our own observance of human rights, what is it that we're going to do to ensure that we keep the standards that are expected of us? But the reaction has been very knee-jerk, very political, which is very unfortunate. It reminds me of the Commission of Inquiry on voting patterns and electoral violence, which President Lungu set up, and I was privileged to be part of it, led by retired Judge Mnalula Lisimba. If you recall, after 2016, we were asked to look at the violence that had colored the run-up and the aftermath of the 2016 elections. But after handing over the report in 2018, President Lungu did nothing about it. And one gets the impression that President Lungu and his team thought the report would point only at the UPND as having been instigators of corruption. But the report points to both. the PF and the UPND as having been involved in electoral violence.
Yeah.
So, going back to the special rapporteur, you invite a special rapporteur, they give you a report. The next thing that you do is come up with an action plan, table it in Parliament, let parliamentarians buy into that, and the rest of the country to know where you are taking us, having had this good report.
Very, quickly, this country is not an island. We connected, to the world, through various, bodies. People are questioning the status of geopolitics, of this government. In particular, the actions of the president. He doesn't attend some key, meetings at the UN. His position as a country is questions on the Israeli-Palestine, war, visitations, to certain, countries, his attendance at the inauguration of the Tanzanian president. And 4 years it has taken for him to pay an official visit, to Zimbabwe. Your quick thoughts on that?
I think that we need to reposition ourselves. Zambia has always been a leading country in this region. We can go back to President Hakainde. He provided leadership to the region. President Chiluba was right in the thick of things in ensuring that we negotiated peace treaties in the region. Zambia has always been looked up to as a leader, and I think we need to maintain that. Our foreign policy should essentially cement our position. Yes, we're talking about economic diplomacy, but beyond economic diplomacy, we need to maintain those political ties and social and cultural ties with our neighbors. We need to be in this league of nations at the international level, which are progressive. I mean, where people are talking about human rights being violated. We shouldn't be seen to be sitting on the fence. We should be very strong in protecting the rights of all citizens in the world. If there is war, and the president himself keeps saying instability,